Like, share, and subscribe before you begin, because stories like this deserve to be felt, not just heard. What you're about to listen to isn't about gossip or shock value. It's about a life lived under constant observation and the quiet weight that comes when the cameras finally stop rolling. There's a stillness surrounding Sarah Gilbert today that feels unfamiliar, even unsettling, to those who have watched her for decades. Not because something dramatic happened overnight, but because so many chapters closed at once. Fame didn't collapse for her. It simply ended, softly leaving space where noise used to live. For someone who grew up with scripts, schedules, and studio lights dictating her rhythm, that silence carries emotion. At 50, Sarah isn't unraveling, but she is reckoning. With what she gave, what she protected, and what she lost while trying to survive a life that never really paused for her feelings. Sarah's story was complicated long before audiences ever met Darlene Connor. Born in Santa Monica in 1975, she entered a family shaped by creativity and fracture in equal measure. Television ran through her bloodline, yet stability never fully did. Her grandfather helped shape early American TV, but behind that legacy were silences no one explained to her as a child. The name she chose for herself carried meaning she wouldn't understand for decades. Taking the surname Gilbert wasn't about rebellion or branding. It was about belonging. Only later did she learn the truth surrounding the man whose name she proudly carried. And by then, the damage of secrecy had already woven itself into her emotional world. Growing up in a home where difficult truths were buried taught her how to endure quietly, how to smile while not asking questions, and how to sense pain without being allowed to name it. Unlike many child actors, Sarah's early years were deliberately controlled. Her mother insisted on public school, normal routines, and a life not fully swallowed by Hollywood. To outsiders, it looked strict. To Sarah, it was protection layered with unspoken fear. She was surrounded by fame she didn't yet have, watching others burn out under its pressure. That awareness matured her early. When she began acting, she wasn't chasing attention. She was stepping carefully into it. Each audition, each role, felt like entering a world she was taught to respect, but not trust. By the time she landed early television roles, she already understood that success came with invisible costs. She learned early how to separate who she was from who audiences wanted her to be, a skill that would later save her and wound her at the same time. When Roseanne entered her life, everything shifted. At just 13, Sarah became part of a show that mirrored real American families in ways television rarely dared to. Her character wasn't loud or flashy, but sharp, guarded, and deeply observant. Audiences connected instantly because Darlene felt real. What few realized was how much of Sarah lived inside that role. The sarcasm wasn't armor for the character alone. It was protection for a young girl navigating fame while questioning herself in ways she didn't yet understand. As the show grew, so did her responsibility. She wasn't just acting anymore. She was shaping stories, influencing tone, and quietly holding emotional balance on a set that often felt volatile. All of this happened while she was still growing up, still figuring out who she was when the lights went off. Behind the scenes, her personal confusion deepened. Dating her co-star looked perfect from the outside, but internally something didn't align. The affection was real, the respect was genuine, yet something felt missing. She didn't have language for it then, only a persistent sadness she couldn't explain. Those moments of confusion weren't dramatic. They were quiet realizations that lingered long after scenes wrapped. Loving someone while feeling disconnected from yourself is a lonely experience, especially when you're young and famous. She didn't talk about it. She didn't even fully think about it. She buried it, as she'd learned to do with anything complicated. That habit of emotional restraint would define much of her adult life. As she entered adulthood, Sarah chose privacy over spectacle. She built a relationship that offered stability rather than headlines, and for a time, that choice gave her peace. Motherhood grounded her in ways fame never could. Creating a family away from flashing cameras allowed her to experience joy without performance. Still, honesty waited in the background, not because she was ashamed, but because she feared consequences she couldn't control. Hollywood had changed, but not enough to guarantee safety. When she finally spoke her truth publicly, it wasn't a declaration. It was a release, a quiet acknowledgement of something she had always been. The relief was real, but so were the changes that followed. Truth doesn't always arrive without loss. Her separation from a long-term partner marked the end of emotional stability she had relied on for years. Though handled with care and respect, it still altered her world. Soon after, she stepped into another relationship that burned brighter and faster. Love arrived with intensity and creativity, and for a moment, it felt like renewal. Marriage and another child followed, blending personal happiness with professional chaos. But balancing multiple identities is exhausting. Producer, actor, mother, partner. Each role demanded presence and something had to give. Slowly, the strain became undeniable. Love didn't disappear, but energy did. By the time separation came, it wasn't dramatic. It was tired. Professionally, she was facing another storm. Returning to Roseanne as both actor and producer meant carrying history while managing conflict. The revival brought massive success, but also reopened wounds that never healed. Navigating volatile personalities, political tension, and creative control placed her in an impossible position. When everything collapsed, blame followed her quietly but persistently. She wasn't responsible for the explosion, but she stood close enough to feel the heat. Standing up for what she believed in cost her peace. Silence might have protected her image, but she chose responsibility instead. That choice lingered long after the headlines faded. Leaving the daytime show she built felt like stepping away from a piece of herself. It wasn't failure. It was exhaustion. Choosing family over ambition sounded simple, but for someone whose identity was built on creation, it felt like loss. Watching that show unravel years later reopened old wounds, even though she wasn't there anymore. Legacy is heavy when it collapses quietly. There were no farewell speeches, no grand acknowledgments, just an ending. By 2025, the ending stacked quietly. The final episode of a series that defined her life aired without fanfare. Selling her home felt symbolic. Divorce finalized without drama. The schedule emptied. For the first time since childhood, nothing demanded her presence. That kind of freedom can feel terrifying when you've never known stillness. She wasn't broken. She was adjusting to quiet. Sarah Gilbert today isn't a tragedy. She's a woman learning how to exist without constant momentum, without roles to hide behind, without expectations shaping her days. Her sadness isn't loud, but it's honest. And maybe that honesty is the beginning of something gentler. After everything she's carried, maybe she deserves peace more than applause, or maybe something new entirely. What do you think she deserves next?